Yeah, interestingly, support for an assault weapons ban actually decreased in the aftermath of the Uvalde shooting and the Buffalo shooting and the hospital shooting that I referenced earlier. But it's now at its lowest point in the Quinnipiac poll since 2013, with just a bare majority, 50% supporting an assault weapons ban. And I believe it's 45% opposed and 5% didn't answer. But those are really low numbers for that policy, and seems to be a continuation of a recent trend. We've written about this in the past. I think you had a piece on the last Quinnipiac poll that asked this question last year, and usually what you'll see, and the other questions in this poll show this phenomenon, but usually after a high-profile mass shooting, especially one as horrific as Uvalde was, with the killing of 19 children and 2 teachers,
right,
support for gun control increases across the board on nearly all policies.
Right.
With one exception that I'll get into in a second. But you did see that with the other policies put forward in this poll. So general support for stricter gun laws went up. It's now at 57%, which is still fairly low compared to traditional support for stricter gun laws,
right,
that you've seen even a couple of years back. So, and look, this is the very first poll that we're really getting digging into these issues in the wake of Uvalde. So it can't take away too much from it. It's just one poll.
Right.
We'll see if other polls match this finding, but yeah. So you've seen an increase in general support for gun control. You've seen an increase in support for universal background checks, which is up to, is at 92%. I mean, that policy always polls really well.
Right.
You had a piece on why that doesn't necessarily translate to actual laws being passed,
right,
or people being voted out of office for opposing universal background checks that people should check out if they want to understand more about that. But there's other policies, even raising the age of purchase for all guns to 21 polled really well. Red flag laws polled, in the 70 plus area, and all those things increased in this poll. But assault weapons ban did not. And the one other policy that doesn't tend to increase in the wake of mass shootings, support for it doesn't go up, is total handgun ban.
Right.
That which used to be popular back not that long ago in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
And
60% supported it back then, which is just unthinkable today, just because of how ubiquitous handguns are and handgun ownership is, even among people that aren't particularly fond of guns.
Right. And now it's become something that you get maybe 18 or 19% support.
Right.
And most of these pollsters don't even bother asking the question anymore. I think Gallup's like the only one left asking about handgun bans. Quinnipiac didn't even ask. So I don't know. Are we starting to see assault weapons, AR-15s, become viewed by Americans in the same way as handguns are, which is that they don't think they should be banned regardless of what the circumstances are. Because handguns are used more often in mass shootings and far more often in murder overall than AR-15s or any kind of rifle. And that still doesn't move the needle anymore in terms of the American public's desire to ban those firearms, because they become, obviously, they're also used by hundreds of millions of law-abiding civilians for their own self-defense. And I don't know if is that the way that AR-15s are moving now, is in terms of Americans' perception of them. Again, just one poll, so
right.
I don't know.
But there's some, like you
said,
there's some evidence in the political realm, because in the House gun package that just passed, there are several policies in there that passed: ghost gun bans, safe storage laws, magazine capacity restrictions. But you didn't see it. You saw an assault weapon, raising the age of purchase for an assault weapon to 21. But there was no assault weapon ban brought to the floor and voted on in that whole big package. even though it's a Democratic controlled chamber of Congress. So, at least there's some political correlation to this where it's like,
Yeah.
we'll pass some gun control, but we're not going to touch that issue.
Yeah, certainly. And that's a change, right? If you're looking for an actual change in gun politics over the last 10 years, that's a clear one.
Yeah.
That Democrats now do not support an assault weapons ban, at least not enough of them to get one through the democratically controlled House.
Right.
And certainly, I'd be surprised if you got more than, 40 votes for it in the Senate
Right.
today. You can get more for an age restriction, which is what they did instead in the House. But I mean, you only got 220 votes. They couldn't pass the magazine ban without help from a couple of Republicans.
Right.
They only had 220 votes for the magazine ban. So imagine, an assault weapons ban is probably even harder to get votes for. So
Right.
if you can't get the Democratic caucus to support even a magazine ban, now obviously most of them supported it, but the point here is that they couldn't have passed it on their own. They didn't
Right.
have 218 votes for it, and so I mean that's a legitimate, tangible change in gun politics, and it's moved in the direction of fewer restrictions, not more.
Right.
So that's interesting. And if you look at the history of state level assault weapons bans, I don't believe there's been a new one since the 90s, if I remember correctly.
No, you see
there
like
have been extensions.
extensions and strengthening amendments and what have you, but no, not off the top of my head. I can't think of it.
No brand new ones.
Right.
Since really the federal one went into effect in 94. There might have been, I might be a little fuzzy on the exact dates, but it's around that time period where most of the current assault weapons bans passed in places like California and Massachusetts, Maryland, New York. Now, all of those places have since expanded their assault weapons bans,
Right.
and made them more aggressive. But I can't think of a single one that's been
Possibly
put in place since
Connecticut
that
after
time.
Sandy Hook. I don't know. if
No,
they had
Connecticut
theirs
already
before.
had a ban
Okay.
on assault weapons. They expanded it after Sandy Hook, but it was already in place. And so, it's interesting I just think the era of the assault weapons ban is over.
Yeah, I think that's
Clearly
right.
now.
I think there's something to that where Americans, even though broad gun control, more broadly might pull well, I think there's some sort of unrealized discomfort that many Americans have with total categorical bans of types of guns. That's why you're seeing a coinciding cratering in support for handgun bans. You're also starting to see the assault weapons ban support drop. It's like, oh yeah, maybe we'll tinker around the edges and maybe we'll limit magazines, but categorical bans Americans are kind of uncomfortable with is the impression I get.
I think that's absolutely true. And Americans tend to favor bans on individuals based on their behavior.
Yeah.
Right. And if you look in this Quinnipiac poll, you'll also see that most Americans still blame mental health issues for mass shootings rather than the availability of firearms. There's 40% say it's mental health issues, whereas only 19% say it's the availability of firearms. So,
Right.
there's and there's a couple other factors. Family issues is like 11%, and
Social media is
10% from social media, yeah.
Right.
And entertainment is at like 9% or whatever. So you like video games and music and stuff that you hear occasionally. People try to blame, but most people think it's a mental health issue, or the plurality of people think it's mental health and not just how many guns are in the country.
Right.
And in fact, in this poll, it shows people don't support limiting the number of guns in the country either.
Right.
It's interesting. I just think it's a new era, and one of the big reasons that I think there's less and less support for an assault weapons ban, both in polling and in practice, is that there's just way more of them than there used to be. There's it was estimated a couple of years ago, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, that there are 18 million modern sporting rifles, which is kind of the industry term for, these are all kind of somewhat vague terms.
Yeah.
Assault weapons ban, what's an assault weapon, right? It varies from state to state, depending on, places that have assault weapons bans, they have different definitions for what an assault weapon even is. So,
right.
But modern sporting rifles is a similar concept where it's like AR-15s, AK-47s, and similar guns. I'm sure there's a specific definition that the industry has for it, but you get the idea. There's about 18 million of those, which is a lot. Right. It's the most popular. The AR is the most popular rifle in the country, and you can tell every time you go into a gun store. There's a dozen different AR style firearms in most gun stores I've been in, right. Whereas there might only be a couple of other firearms for sale. Like, it's just an incredibly popular gun, and a lot of people own them for legitimate reasons, like home defense and target shooting and competitive shooting and even hunting of smaller game. And you can hunt deer, but it's not as popular for that because people tend to favor larger cartridges for that. But anyway,
right.
The point is, it's very popular now, so it becomes much harder, like handguns, to just institute outright bans on it. I think that's part of it. But
all right, no, I think that's right. Like you said, it's only one poll, so we'll keep tabs on this and see how it changes.
It's one poll,
but it's definitely an interesting thing.
Yeah, it's one poll, but it's one in a longer line of reasons to think that the era is it's just over. There's no more appetite for new assault weapons bans.